So yesterday, we did the final 5-star reveal show here at 24/7 Sports. Chris Singletary was on the show. Cooper Pategna was on the show. We've got a cast of thousands behind the scenes, and they are responsible for everything from editing film of high school recruits to actually going out on the road to going to the All-American games and scouting and being in touch with guidance counselors and high school position coaches and parents and family members and everything in between, so that hopefully you can get as good a read on a kid and as many eyeballs and as many reps on a kid as you possibly can to get a proper evaluation on him. Now, there is an allegation. It's a dirty one, but listen, we got to peel the Band-Aid off tonight, even though I work for this company, not for the next 15 minutes, because if there is bias involved in this recruiting process, it's not going to happen on our watch. And so dutifully, we went to work for you, the public, today. And I essentially did an internal audit of our entire company. And I did not ask for permission because we will ask for forgiveness later. But to be clear, here's the allegation. It has to do with Alabama. And the allegation is, just as we see in big government and just as we see in big pharma, we also have a lobby out there around big recruiting. And that lobby pushes what is known in the recruiting world as the Bama Bump. The Bama Bump is very simply this. There are wide swaths of the college football public that would lead you to believe, yeah, Bama recruits good, but they don't recruit nearly as good as it looks like they do, because once a kid commits to Bama, or once Bama's in on a kid, they tend to get an extra star or a couple of extra bumps next to their name, and they end up going from number 64 to number 42, or maybe number 33 to number 27, and what was once a 4-star is now a 5-star merely because of that script A, that crimson logo, and Nick Saban being attached to their name. Now, this sounds dirty to me. I mean, this sounds reprehensible, as a matter of fact. We can't be involved in this, certainly as a show. We cannot, in good ethical conscience, be associated with this. And so I went to digging a little bit. Not just in this class either. I went back quite a while and I was digging. There you see the notables, if you're watching on YouTube, of the Alabama 2022 recruiting class. Some of these guys have already signed. Most of them actually have already signed and enrolled. A lot of these guys are early enrollees now. But if you're telling me that a lot of these guys aren't all they're cracked up to be, hey, we got to know about it. Now, you can sense probably a dash of sarcasm in my voice, and it's not a dash. Really, my voice is dripping with sarcasm right now, because now I want to be real with you for a second. You had me with this for a long time. You guys had me with this long before I ever came to work here. You guys had me with this for a long time. And I thought to myself, yeah, okay, Nick Saban, I got all the respect in the world for the guy, but really, can they possibly be recruiting at that level? And I would do just like some of you. I would anecdotally pick out an example, and I would see that a player, only after he committed to Alabama, ended up in the 5-star status in whichever service I was looking at the time. And then I would look at a kid that washed out after being a 5-star, and I would say, ha, he must have been overrated. And then I would conversely maybe look at the rivals of some of Alabama, and I would see that a former 5-star, once he committed there, bumped down to a 4-star. You can do this stuff all day. Each class takes about 25 per cycle. These are hundreds of kids. Therefore, hundreds of examples that if you wanted to, you could anecdotally pick from to make any argument that you wanted to. I used to do it along with you. So only recently, and by recently I mean the last 10 years, only in the last decade have I changed my opinion on this, but I did not do it without a lot of forethought. I did my own research. I encourage you to do the same thing. Here's what I kept running into. These actually is plural. These were the terminal flaws to me against the Bama Bump argument. Data, logic tended to get in the way. Certainly on-field results got in the way. The NFL draft was a real you-know-what against this argument. Also, the entire concept of Nick Saban. You know, if I am to call the guy the best of all time, which I do, and even those of you who really despise the ground he walks on, begrudgingly have to admit that's the best of all time, you have to allow there to be in the equation the possibility that Nick Saban's evaluations are ahead of the recruiting industry. That has to be on the table. Just logic would tell you if even fractions of the respect you have for this guy are valid, it means he knows how to evaluate talent. And he's got an entire army up there working to evaluate talent. And if you don't know, I'll tell you, he does each and every one of their evals personally. There is not a kid who's brought to Nick Saban who's already been evaled and they say, Coach, we need your permission to offer this guy. He's doing the eval in person. And he worked in the NFL long before he did in college ball. So what I'm suggesting, I'm just asking, I guess, Is it not possible that an alternate point of view to the Bama bump point of view could just be that Nick Saban's evals get ahead of the curve a little bit? I am going to suggest to you that's reality. But look, I used to be on the other side of the fence. So I'm trying to explain to you what changed my mind. I'm not going to try and force you to think any which way. I'm just going to try and use logic and fact-based reasoning so that you and I can walk through this. So let's walk through this right quick. Let's just talk it out. I'm going to take a little sip of the triple espresso here. Remind me to tell you a story about producer Jesse. Jesse, come in my ear and remind me to tell them a story about you later. So Alabama. Let's talk about the Bama bump. If Alabama recruits are indeed being overly inflated on the front end, there's got to be evidence eventually, right? And that evidence, I would assume, would come on the back end. It would either come on underachievement on the field, or it would certainly come in underachievement in the NFL draft. Certainly, these are the two most discernible metrics by which we can gauge whether Alabama recruiting classes were accurately ranked. Now, I think a blind man can see where this is going, but I'm going to take you down the road anyway. Because I'm going to ask you, where does that evidence start to mount? I told you, I looked into it myself years ago when I really thought this through and I said, there's got to be evidence. I'm so sure that the Bama bump exists. There's got to be evidence. Where is it? You look to the left, you look to the right, up and down, everywhere in between. They keep winning national titles every other year on average. Nick Saban at this point has got like 39 first-round draft picks to 26 total losses in his career at Alabama, which is just absurd. It sounds like a spoken typo, a verbalized typo. That's real, though. There is no evidence there. But look, even if I haven't convinced you, I'd already convinced myself by that point, but even if I hadn't convinced you at that point, you could reasonably say, yeah, but even all that stuff's anecdotal, since that's the word of the year, apparently. All that's anecdotal, and you could go to yesterday, because this is what really brought this upon myself. I'm not on the rankings council, and yet even I opened my inbox yesterday, because I am kind and I am benevolent enough to write down at the bottom of the screen when they show my lower third bio, I put a personal email there. I have multiples. And I leave it open so you guys can correspond with me. I had 2 great emails I shared publicly today. But yesterday, I go home and I open up my inbox and I see a whole bunch of people blaming me, among several other people, for the Bama bump. And they said things like, Elijah Pritchett, oh, that's mysterious. It's an offensive tackle from Columbus, Georgia, by the way. He commits to Alabama, all of a sudden he's got a 5-star next to his name. And it used to be that Elijah Pritchett wasn't even on anyone's radar. Well, both of those things are true. Case in point, the whole Saban eval process. In fact, I got someone close to the Alabama program who once called me up, because I'm from Columbus, asking about Elijah Pritchett and asking whether I knew anything about him, because they had only really got him on their radar. There was a once upon a time situation with Elijah Pritchett where to get good film on him, you had to search his quarterback's huddle account because there was not adequate film out in the marketplace on Elijah Pritchett. Well, guess who did have the film on him? Nick Saban in Alabama had the film on him. And so they put out the offer, to be honest with you, before a lot of people in our industry even had something tangible to look at and work with. But maybe it's not that. You know, let's go devil's advocate. Let's go down that path. There's a fork in the road. There's logic over here. There's what we're about to talk about over there. Elijah Pritchett. I opened up my inbox. I got 10 folks yesterday saying, shame on 24/7 Sports. Elijah Pritchett used to not even be on anyone's radar screen, and now he's a 5-star. Why? Well, there can only be one reason here, obviously. Because he's an Alabama commit. Now, here's what I did. For about 30 minutes, and then I just stopped because I realized my efforts were going to be futile. I said, friend, that is, here's the word for a third time, Jesse, keep tracking there, anecdotal. And they said, what are you talking about? And I said, what do you know about Jeremiah Alexander? And they said, he has nothing to do with this. I said, he's got everything to do with it. Do you know out there, if you're watching and you follow recruiting, you do know who I'm talking about. You probably, half of you already know the point I'm about to make. Jeremiah Alexander is a 24/7 Sports composite 5-star. Now what that means is, at this company, we take an average of every recruiting service and we take the grade that they have on a player and we just throw it in a blender and turn it on, and what gets poured out, that is the 24/7 Sports composite rating. So it's a perfect blend of the entire industry. Jeremiah Alexander, from the state of Alabama, he is committed to Alabama. He's enrolled there, I think. He is a composite 5-star. You want to know where he's not a 5-star? He is not a 5-star at the very company in which I work for right now, 24/7. What we are saying, to be perfectly clear here, is we are saying that the Bama bump is in real. It's just been full effect, and it's happening all around us. Yet we got this kid named Jeremiah Alexander floating around out here who you have every excuse to rate a 5-star because a lot of the other industries had and a lot of the other entities in the industry had. And for some reason, this company here, which is so hell-bent on perpetuating the Bama bump, chose to suppress his rating and keep him down. Now, when I presented that piece of counter evidence, I got no response. My point is, you could argue all day. Either side of the fence, really, you could argue all day. That's why that is, as I said, futile, because all of it's anecdotal. You can cherry pick. It's not a basketball class, okay? If you were taking 5 or 6 kids per class, then you could really narrow it down. You can't be cherry picking one kid. I had some LSU folks come at me and say, Walker Howard got bumped down to a 4-star because he's an LSU commit. What are we talking about? Well, honestly, let me let you in a little secret here. If there were a lot of biases in play in this industry, I can assure you, if they were in play, they would be to benefit the LSUs of the world and the Alabamas of the world, but also the Tennessees of the world and the Floridas of the world, the big recruiting markets. Don't overthink the room here. That's how this would actually work. USC football would be propped up at every turn. I had someone ask me about USC earlier today, right here in the live chat actually. And I said, let's walk this one through. Are you suggesting to me that there is a conspiracy at this company to take a team smack dab in the middle of the second biggest media market in America and actively work against the best interests of that program? Is that what we're suggesting? Is 24/7 Sports better off if USC does not succeed? Is that the point we're making? Anyway, so all of that notwithstanding, I talked to you a long time ago, and I'm going to reiterate right now, about what actual data suggests on this. But what I've noticed about the Bama bump crowd is they're around on signing day and early signing day. They're around when we reveal the final 5 stars. They are nowhere to be found in April, come NFL draft time, and they are nowhere to be found in January when it's time to play the playoffs and the national championship game. They are ghosts when it matters the most. One reason is because you got a guy in Nick Saban winning a national title every other year, thus validating to anyone's mind with common sense, they probably don't have overrated recruiting classes. They keep performing. They keep achieving. The second thing that you need to know is they have put more kids in the first round than they have total losses under Nick Saban. But even if those first 2 points weren't enough, let me drop the most definitive piece of data on you right now. Alabama draft-eligible 5 stars under Nick Saban are going in the first round at a 48.8% clip. The rest of college football combined, 18.3%. Allow me to translate. 5-star draft-eligible players who go to Alabama are more than 2 times as likely to be drafted in the first round as 5-star rated players who go anywhere else in college football. Do you know what that actually means? It means not only, according to actual data and logic, is the Alabama rating justified, I could even make a legitimate argument the classes may be underrated. Now let me peel back the curtain a little bit, since I do work here, and tell you what I've observed since I've been here. No one's told me to talk about this. In fact, I'll probably get a text saying, don't talk about it. I have sat on these rankings calls before. I don't participate. I'm not on the rankings council, nor do I need to be. But I have sat on the rankings calls before. Here's the reality. The reality behind the scenes is, even though I wouldn't think this way, there are a lot of people who are involved in the rankings process who are fully aware of the perceptions out in the industry. And so, if anything, here's what the conversation actually sounds like. What the conversation actually sounds like is something like this. We got this kid here, and he checks this box, and this box. He's got that critical factor, this critical factor. Here's the one tie-up. The one tie-up is, oh man, he's committed to Bama. Oh man, they already got 4 5-star rated kids. You know what people are going to say. Now, I'm not saying that ultimately impacts the final rankings decision. What I am saying is, if there's an awareness in the room, it's on the total opposite side of the fence of the way that you perceive that it works. The bottom line is, the reason they got so many 5-star kids is because 5-star kids want to go there. They do a great job in evaluation, so they're often ahead of our industry. And thirdly, the best of all time is running the program. That's the Bama bump. The Bama bump is real, but it's real in a sense that it is earned, deserved, and valid. And if anything, as I just suggested, maybe we need to bump them even a little bit more.